Well, I don't drink as much as I used to. 'Cause lately, it just ain't my style. And the hard times don't hurt like they ought to. They pass quicker like when I was a child. And somehow I've learned how to listen to a sound like the sun going down. In the magic, the morning is raining. It's a song for the life I've found. Puts my feet on the ground. Now the midsummer days ain't so heady. They just blow like a breeze through my mind. And nothing appears in a hurry. It just makes up for some more lost time. Somehow I've learned how to listen to a sound like the sun going down. And the magic, the morning is raining. It's a song for the friend I found. She puts my feet on the ground. She puts my feet on the ground. She puts my feet on the ground. She puts my feet on the ground.
Here, fuck off, will you? Fresh, yeah?
Shut the fuck up!
You ready to go?
Let's go.
Yeah. Are we episode 15?
Episode 15.
Wow. What do you mean?
Are we episode 15? I'm very aware of the little accents and all and voices because I'm listening to so many voices.
Well, we're here.
Episode 15?
What about that one that I was talking about, which is, that kind of, that like the dirt. We all bunked on the dirt. Middle class kind of, right. You hear it a lot on, I heard this woman talking on RTE the other day and I couldn't take her serious because she was talking in that accent, Well, mummy makes a roast on Sunday, And I was just like, oh, go away.
I was watching the John Gilligan thing.
Oh, yeah. What do you think?
There was some people speaking on that and they had that Dorsch voice. Dorsch.
Right.
The Garda arrested 3 scumbags on the Dorsch.
Right. What did you think of Gilligan? But did you think he was...
I think if you're a journalist and you get the opportunity to speak to possibly the most notorious criminal gangster in the history of the state,
that can be interviewed.
That wants to be interviewed.
But can be interviewed.
Yeah, that can be interviewed, that wants to be interviewed and is kind of honest. You raise your eyebrow there.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I haven't got a fucking clue what he done.
I haven't got a clue either.
What he done, what he didn't do.
I wasn't there,
but
so
it
I
came
don't
across as kind of honest. His last thing in it was, I ruined my whole fucking life. My whole life was doing this shit, and I ruined my whole life. That's a bit of honesty. It came across like he was being honest. I haven't got a fucking clue.
I'd say that life, that you are part of that whole system, where you're ducking and diving and all that kind of stuff, that honesty is not part of that thing. I don't think honesty plays a big part in that world.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is, the last line he said was very honest. That I'm after making a balls of my whole life.
Yeah.
My whole life is ruined. So let's go on that. Let's go on that little bit of honesty. Is there evidence throughout the whole thing that he was being dishonest? We don't fucking know. We haven't got a clue. So I'm just going on the very last bit. It came across as this fella realises he's not far from death's door. Like, he's 70 odd years of age. He's probably going to get locked up again. He's probably going to do another 5 year. So that accent was riddled through this thing, and it was kind of like a little bit of, here's this working class criminal who rode the fucking state and rode the system for years and years and years, and the way that we're going to condemn him is by having this middle class voice talk over it. That's what came across to me a little bit. There was this girl, she was talking, and she was doing me head in, she was smiling as she was talking about serious stuff.
I'm not so sure that that's a cynical kind of, well, we're going to do this because of this. I think that's just who they are. I think the people who get stuff made, the people who get things funded are those people. You know, there's not an awful lot of working class stuff that gets funded. Right, so one of the things is, right, you have Nicola Talon's podcast, right, okay, which is all about criminals and stuff like that, right? And that always portrays working class people, you know, as criminals, you know what I mean? That's what I always think, right? So when you get a working class person on the show, he's talking like that, yeah, well, you know, I mean, and we robbed this and we done that, right? But there's also another voice emerging through podcasts, right? The DIY thing, you know. So your podcast, The Traveller and the Countryman, right? That's the voice of travellers. That's a traveller's voice. Normally travellers are depicted in the media as robbers and all kinds of different things, right? So
Robbers.
Like, I listen to Untold Stories, the podcast from the inner city, the north inner city, right? It's very well produced, which I love. The Ballymun ones are great. Ballymun Recovery, and they've just done one there recently, Leave a Light On. 3 women from Ballymun who have their own podcast. So they're just talking about Ballymun, and they're talking about what it's like for women and what it's like, you know,
it's a bit
education.
recovery based.
There's some recovery there, I think, yeah. There's some recovery.
Is that what the
there.
Untold Stories one is about as well?
Untold Stories is all about drugs in the inner city. So you have a young man talking about his life, but it's anonymous, right? Then you have people who have worked in the addiction services, right? And what it's like for them, you know? And then you have people who have come through addiction and who are in recovery and stuff like that.
I seen Richard Branson retweeted
The Untold Stories?
Yeah.
Did he?
Richard Branson said, somebody told me about this, I had to listen to it, it sounded bleeding deadly. If Richard Branson's out there and you want to retweet this podcast, I won't charge you.
Walkaway.com.
Or Elon or anybody out there.
Glenn shared this for us, which was great, like, you know.
Thanks, Glenn.
No, he's deadly. We have to get him on this. So, yeah, the voices, you know, if you look at, and this has gone on for years, like, any burglar that's on an RTE ad is always like, all right, I'm a burglar, I'm from fucking Finglas or something. And you're like, where does this come from? Like, you know what I mean? And the only crimes that get highlighted are the drug-related ones, all the ones that people end up in jail for, right? There's no looking at the drug issue and going, let's try and solve this.
I love the one about the coke in Cork. They were saying it's the biggest coke haul in the history of the state. It wasn't, because there was another one 2 years ago that was 300 million. There was another one 4 years ago along the same coast that was 450 million. 150 million euros worth of coke. If it was 150 million euros worth of heroin, the news reporting would have been a bit different. But because my perception of it was, because it's the drug of choice in the upper echelons, whatever the fuck that means, of Irish society, it wasn't analysed as much as it was who's the drug for.
Yeah, there wasn't that, right, you get that. But the thing that I thought was weird was the people who were celebrating it being caught. I was thinking, loads of them use drugs, loads of them use cocaine. So what is it like to be, we say, a guard who recreationally uses coke, right? If there's such a thing as recreational use, but there is, right? If you're a guard and you're an army ranger, or you're one of those people that is part of that team, right? Or you're in the guards, or you're in the upper echelons of the guards or something like that, and you're recreationally using coke, and then you're part of this hit squad, part of your life says,
let's say you're a guard and you have a cocaine addiction,
right?
And you're on the team who goes to jump on the boat. Privately at home, you're dry sniffing coke on your own for the last 2 years.
Oh, I feel sorry for people who are in addiction. You know, addiction is takes away a lot of choice, you know what I mean? And it, years ago, the response to addiction was, well, it's your own fault because you went down that journey yourself, right? It's a bit different now, like, you know what I mean? The explanation of addiction is more, what's your man's name's? Gabor Mate, is it?
Yeah, I don't know him. I don't know him now.
But you have heard him, have you?
Yeah, Gabor Mate, yeah.
Me and Gabor.
Gabor, if you're out there, right, give this an old bleeding.
A whip to you.
Give this an old bounce on the old Instagram.
But he has a good handle on what addiction is, right? And a lot of services are kind of pointed in that direction. If you're a recreational user, whatever that is, right, and you're part of the hit squad that's going to, or the part of the team, or you're part of the RTE News broadcast, and you're a sniffer, what is that like? I find that really, really weird. Like, I found the whole thing weird because I was thinking, if you look at the statistics of people that use cocaine, if you look at the amount of cocaine that's coming into Ireland, because they were saying that this was basically a drop in the ocean, right? So there's a huge amount of cocaine
in the ocean.
Well, it nearly went into the ocean, yeah. There's a huge amount of cocaine use. So the one thing that cocaine needs is the few quid. So it's not really a drug of choice.
There's an interesting thing. What's the accent of cocaine? You know what the accent of burglaries is. You know what the accent of heroin is.
Yeah.
You know what the accent of that TV show, what's the one with the guards? Crime Line.
The K or something like that.
Inside the Special K or the Crime Line.
There was another one that used to be on the radio, which was your man, Paddy O'Gorman, and he used to do this thing called queuing for a living, and he used to interview people who were on queues, right? And he'd be asking them the most personal questions, and he'd be asking them all kinds of mad stuff, right? But it was always painful. What that kind of accent, or they were from Cork, working class Cork. He was always on them queues, but he was never on the queue for the AIB Bank in fucking Donnybrook. You know what I mean?
You know who done that deadly? Max Savage. He had these two characters called the Head Wreckers, and they were kind of like Celtic Tiger business sniffers. And they were like, I'm on the banger. I'm doing the banger. How many houses do you have? I'm on the banger.
Again, a voice that's not on, he, even though he was Tuberty's cousin, he was never on the Late Late Show. He did the Savage Eye. How they gave him the Savage Eye. And it's only now, like the Savage Eye is big on TikTok now, and you're starting to go, oh my God, how did he get away with this?
The guy I work with, his mates are the guys who done the production.
Right.
And he said to them exactly the same thing. How the fuck did he get away with it? And they said to him, you want to see the shit that we didn't
air.
I
can imagine. And
shit that we didn't air. And one of the recent ones that I seen was Russell Brand riding Ireland.
Yeah.
It was just, he's so, to use that cliche, he was so ahead of his time.
I remember in the 70s, right, they hated the Sex Pistols, right? They became hugely popular amongst youth culture, creating a subculture. Lydon was being interviewed one time, Johnny Rotten, John Lydon, but they were asking him about this, like, that he was being pushed out, and he was like, look who they have in. He said, Jimmy Savile. But that was in the 70s. Like, he was way ahead, right? So they still kept him out. They still pushed him out. But he went on. He charted his own plane. He did his own thing. And he's always been there. And he's always kind of kept his foot in. He's always on the outskirts of society. He's always pushing and saying mad stuff and all that kind of stuff. But they've kept him out. The likes of Savile was on everything. That sounded wrong, but he was on every show.
He reminds me of the lads here, Versatile, who just done a world tour with one of the biggest acts in the world, Snoop Dogg, or whatever. They toured Blade in different parts of the world, but they're kept out. And I think part of the reason they're kept out is to hark back to what you were saying, is the background, is the accent.
They're working class. Like, a lot of their stuff is parody. They're kind of taking a dig at society. That's what rap is. Like, I never really understood rap. I used to hear people saying, I'm a better rapper than you, and that's all, and you were saying to me, well, that's part of the culture, like, you know what I mean?
It's not a part of the culture that I'm mad about.
Oh, either am I. There's a lot of rap that I do like, but it'd be more kind of poet rap. I think that they're having a crack, they're having a laugh.
They had a video online that was taken down recently of Leo Varadkar giving one of the lads a blowjob in the Dáil. Now, you can take that 20 different ways. As a skit, as a bit of comedy, I think it was fucking deadly. But it's not allowed to go up, I think, because that they're coming from a working class background.
Do you remember that there was a magazine, a real out there magazine in Dublin called Slate, remember it? And they did a piece called The Blacks and the Jacks. So a guy from this area,
Like the Blacks and the Jacks, the fellas that you go in and you get your bit of...
Yeah, the spray up. And they weren't kept out. They still find a way in. And I'm sure your woman, the head of RTE that resigned there, recently or, finished up, I'm sure she's working. I'm sure she has a job. I'm sure Tubridy will work. All these people, even though they're tainted, right, they'll still continue. You know what I mean? Whereas the people who, the Al Porters and all these kind of people, like, they're all just pushed out. They're pushed out, little Talaboy, And I hope Al finds his way back in. I really do, I really hope that Al finds his way back, because he's publicly stated that what he was doing was out of order. He had, whatever stuff was going on for him, and he has tried to make amends. What more can you ask, like, you know what I mean? When you put your hand up and say, I made a mistake.
So are you saying if he had a different background, a different address, a different accent, he would be less shunned?
Yeah, well, you look at years ago, there was 3 fellas battered a fella to death outside a nightclub, kids, club in town, and they never got locked up. Put those people in Ballymunfing, Starndale or Tala, they're locked up. You know what I mean? There's no question about it, like, You look at what's going on in town at the minute where, there's lots of young people hanging around, there's lots of violence with alcohol, all that kind of stuff, like, you know what I mean? There's no, let's try and, sort something out here. These guys were, there's no excuses made. They're just scumbags. That's what they call them. We both read a Facebook post the same day last week, all the scroats of society or something like that.
All the dregs of society.
All the dregs of society, And, is that what we want to call our people?
The word scroats actually is on, the way you have those online forums, chat rooms and all that type of stuff. The word scroats is used by a lot of people in Dublin, wealthy, posh Dublin, to describe working class people. Scroats. It's an interesting word. Like, it's not a word that we would use on a daily basis. It's kind of like code. If we say this word, this is what we mean.
I remember the first time I seen cocaine was in the Electric Picnic. I had a camper van, and there was these middle class people in another camper van right beside me, and we were chatting to them, we were making a bit of breakfast, and then one of them came out and she took out one of them little Coke bags, and she was waving it going, oh my God, I didn't realise I had this left, and it was so open, and I was like, that's how open cocaine use is. But if you were to whip out a bag of heroin and go, let's have a
or
turn
if
on.
you were to say the same thing in a working class accent, it would be perceived as different. Because I know the Versatile lads done like a live stunt on stage at a number of their shows where they went, everyone take out their bags now, and you'd have 4,000 young people taking out their bag of cocaine to do a sniff.
Yeah.
And it was shunned, it was frowned upon.
Yeah.
Because I think, yes, cocaine is a shit drug, but it was done in the shit accent. It wasn't done, okay, jolly guys, everybody now, get it, whatever they call it.
And that's not going to happen because it's so hidden. It's so hidden in that culture. Like, I was shocked.
But you just said it was so open.
Well, it was open to, for them. It was amongst them. It was open amongst them. But I was shocked because I never seen it. I never seen it in that culture. I never seen it anywhere. I remember one time seeing cocaine in a house in Ballymun. People don't do lines in front of me. You know what I mean? People don't take drugs in front of me for whatever reason.
I remember I was in a gaff one night and I went into the kitchen and some fella was doing coke and I went into the kitchen and he was like, oh, sorry, Dane, sorry. And I was like, what am I, the fucking Pope or something?
Yeah, I don't.
But he was kind of like alluding, you work in the community and I'm doing this drug.
That's like, I'm not anti-drugs. I just don't take them. They're not something that
I think we should have National Sniff Day. You know the way we have Green Ribbon Day and Pride?
Absolutely.
We should have National Sniff Day where everyone who does a line does it all like that one that the cannabis heads do, 420.
When everything was hidden, when we have secrets, right? When we're hiding all this stuff away, right? It's it's very, very toxic, you know. Whereas I think if people are into drugs and they want to take drugs, well, let them take drugs, okay? And let's, one, take drugs out of the hands of criminals, right? That's one thing, right? I think in America now, a lot of, you know, cannabis use, they have these dispensaries and stuff like that, you know?
Why would you take drugs out of the hands of criminals?
Why would I?
Yeah.
Put it into the hands of businessmen who are also criminals. No, but maybe if people from the community can, you know, that are not extorting money out of people and stuff like that, you know what I mean? I don't know. Why? What do you think?
With prohibition of alcohol in America in the 20s, you got super strength alcohol. You didn't know what
like
you were.
Yeah,
you didn't know what you were drinking. And I think it's the same with drugs. You don't know what you're buying. Like weed, for example. You don't know what weed you're getting from a dealer, from somebody who's not, where there's no control. And it's kind of like in prohibition. There's no control. There's no regulation. So it's unsafe, or it's less safe than consuming products. Any products, Coca-Cola, fucking bags of chips. If you don't know where they're coming from and you can't regulate them and you don't know what the source is and you don't know what exactly, if the ingredients aren't obvious, I think that's less safe for all members of society, regardless of who you are, what age you are. That's what I would be thinking. If it was something that was regulated and there was rules of how to produce it, it would be safer.
No, I still wouldn't take it, right? I'm still not interested in it, okay? So, but I agree, and I think, I remember we had head shops and they were like selling bath salts or something like that. That was what it was. And it wasn't regulated, you know, for human consumption and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people in this country drink alcohol, right? And alcohol is widely available to people over the age of 18, and I'm sure to people under the age of 18. But it's widely available and people have an acceptance around it, right? Now, a lot of people have issues with it, you know, problems with it. That creates a lot of issues in society, like a lot of the violence that's going on, like drink driving, all that kind of stuff. But it's still there. It's there, and it's all the time trying to be regulated and more regulated and all that kind of stuff. Whereas I think if drugs are regulated, I'm not sure that addiction to drugs will be any better. But taking it out of, when I say taking it out of the hands of criminals, I mean taking it away from the underground, taking it away from that unregulated.
The criminal thing for me is interesting. If you take an illicit controlled substance, you're a criminal. So for me, taking the criminalisation away from it is interesting.
Absolutely.
And I'm not sure, case in point, when you were at that gig and that girl took out the line of cocaine, I'm not sure how much criminalising people or making stuff illegal like that deters people from taking drugs. What's the proof that making people criminals because they consume drugs works? If there is proof, let's see it. And, and let's do it across the whole of society and not just like what happened here in Ballymun where we had the documentary Cracking Community. I'd love to fucking see cocaine in Cabinteely as a RT Investigates documentary.
It's not going to happen.
Why isn't it going to happen, Raymond?
I don't know. Well, it's the same thing about the crack team, excuse the pun, who were going onto the bridge of the bow. If you look at statistics, you know, some of those people will be cocaine users, which is a paradox, you know.
But they have the right job or the right accent or the right address.
The right job. Well, that's the caste system. And I listened to an American woman, and she talks about that America, England, Ireland have a caste system. It's not as prevalent as the caste system in India. But if you think about it, if the owners of Lloyd's Bank or whatever marry Bladen Anto from the flats, it's going to be a thing. It's going to be noticed. It's going to be different, you know, and Anto's never going to fit into that family, like, you know, because of the caste system. You know, we have a caste system. We have a system that,
like a woman who married into the royals.
So that's the most obvious one of it, right? But there's less obvious ones of that, like where people from middle class areas don't mix in working class. And there's always the one or two or the three or four or the five or six who do, but generally they don't. Generally, they go to different schools, they hang out in different friends groups. They won't be the ones joyriding. on scramblers and stuff like that.
I was looking at that one, the guards, right? Because we're talking about kind of like criminality and accents and all that type of stuff. So there was one recently called The Guards, and it was an improvement from the previous fucking disaster show called Inside the K, which kind of demonised and labelled working class people in a specific corner of Dublin as the major fucking problem. Now, this done that, but not to the same degree. But what I did like in something like episode 3 was domestic violence. I know that drugs are across every level of society or every part of society, but this showed that domestic violence is the number one thing that the guards have to deal with, and it's fucking rampant everywhere. Doesn't matter what your address. They actually highlighted about 12 different cases, and there was some heinous cases. One of the most traumatic ones that they highlighted was up on the hill of Howth, where you had a woman suffered at the hands of her husband. I just thought for a brief moment it was refreshing. It wasn't just a north side accent or a fucking an address and criminality was tagged onto it.
Yeah.
It went, this is fucking everywhere.
Remember your man Graham Dwyer, was it, who murdered a woman in the Dublin Mountains, and he recently appealed his case based on the phone records and stuff like that. You don't get the stereotype about middle class people is that they're murderers, You don't get that stereotype, even though that was a huge case, like, you know what I mean? There was another murder out in North County Dublin, and they were very middle class, like, you don't get that stigma then, that if you live in Cabinteely, as you say, that you're a murderer or that domestic violence is a big issue.
Why doesn't that shit stick there?
Because they're very good at hiding it.
Yes, they have the high walls, they have the loads of money, they have the litigation. Don't put my name or our area into the psyche of the people as bad, or we'll fucking sue you. We'll bring a defamation case against you. And we just can't do that. We can't afford that. And it's not even we're not even aware that we can do it.
Yeah.
And I always thought when they done the Crack in the Community documentary in Ballymun that we should get together a fund and fucking sue the bollocks out of them.
Freire talks about this, right? There is a thing in these areas which is hopelessness, right? So before we try to do any of that stuff, we got to deal with we're kind of like lighting a spark in a sea of hopelessness, right? Okay. So you've got to try and deal with 100 years of oppression, right? 100 years of poverty, 100 years of bad education facilities, bad health, all that kind of stuff, bad housing, bad. So you got to you're dealing with that. So before you can go, hold on a second, I'm going to sue you, right? You've got to try and deal with the hopelessness first. Freire's whole thing was about education, and he was in Brazil and he was trying to get people to learn, to read and write, but to read and write stuff that was of interest to them, or to get involved in campaigns and stuff like that benefited them. I think his whole thing is called the pedagogy of the oppressed.
Pedagogy of the oppressed.
Pedagogy of oppressed. I can never say the word right. That kind of creating the conditions is still ongoing in community development, You don't have that in the middle class areas. For instance, right, you have a young person who's caught on the M1 with a couple of million worth of drugs, right? And, granted bail, and, free as a board and all that kind of stuff, right? And whatever. Somebody from this area does that, they're locked up, fear of flight, like, you know what I mean? So but a person from a middle class background has the funds to fly, like, you know what I mean? Has the funds to kind of do a burner. But because they're part of that system, and that system is created, developed, and run by middle class people, well, then their kids are looked after.
What is that system you're talking about?
So when you refer to the system, you speak of the government agencies, the departments, So what comes out of the departments? So your Department of Justice, Department of Education, all those things. So anything that comes underneath them is part of the system. So like schools, hospitals, health.
Civil servants,
guards, they're the part of the system.
Civil servants do cocaine. Guards do cocaine. Guards do MDMA. Judges do ketamine. There's something about that interests me, that we are very quick to make inside the K and talk about all of the problems in there, but not as quick to talk about all the bishops doing fucking lines of Hoover.
And would that be the same as, we say, right, you said they're the bishops, right? And I mean, the obvious thing you think about then is that the child abuse scandal, right? So the one thing that happened there was the child abuse that took place, right? But the real scandal was the cover up, right? And that's the system. The system that's
the system
able
is
to
the cover up.
Okay, but I'm talking about if there is a civil servant who has a cocaine problem, right? The reality is if that civil servant goes and says, look, I have a cocaine problem, they'll have an employment assistance program available to them to access counselling, the Rutland Centre, all that kind of stuff, right? That's not available to Bladen Whacker from down there. You know what I mean? It's not there. And as much as people think that Whacker's getting free housing and free education and free whatever, it's not true.
I love the way you're doing the accent.
What is it?
I can't do it. Do it again. Whacker.
Whacker gets free.
Because we do it ourselves. We imprison ourselves in the stereotypes.
So that's the hopelessness. That's part of the hopelessness that I'm talking about. That's part of this, the inner critic. We don't have that confidence. We're lacking. So before we start, right? So when John is in the civil service and he gets the cocaine addiction and he goes off and he gets his, employment assistance program and all that kind of stuff, right? He's at a good starting point, you know what I mean? Whereas Whacker in Darndale has to wait for a place on a program, and he probably have to wait 7 months to get
So
on.
here's a middle class sailing analogy. The other fella has the wind on his back and Whacker has the wind in his face.
Yes.
And the fucking ship is sinking from day one. As you were saying that, as you were talking about the voice and the confidence and the community development and all that type of stuff, one of the big examples, and it goes back to music, I was a hip-hop head and I was never into the braggadocious type of hip-hop. I was into the more aware hip-hop, like Public Enemy and so on. And then emerged this guy whose mother was a Black Panther and he had the message.
Who was he?
His name was Tupac.
Yeah.
He maintained some of who he was, he kept some of his accent, and he tried to raise up the whole people.
Definitely when I heard him rapping back in the day, I definitely heard something more.
Yeah, Brenda Had a Baby was his kind of introduction to the world.
Yeah, you're right. It was consciousness raising, and it was not just bam, 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 I'll shoot you. You know what I mean? It wasn't.
My gold chain is bigger than your gold chain. It wasn't that stuff up until a point, and then it started to kind of turn because he got too big for his boots. He became this huge voice, this huge commodity in that world, in that system. And I think yesterday they announced that they arrested a fella for his murder.
From 1996.
Such is the size of his voice, such was the power of his message. I think it was hushed. I think it was covered up.
So then, educate me then. So Nas.
So Nas is New York.
And what's he? Is he a gangster or what is he?
No, Nas is more street, but like education, really good production, really good lyrics. Yes, I am the best, but not in a fucking machismo or not in a misogynistic way, or just really, really good production.
KRS-One.
KRS-One is kind of like conscious hip-hop, but he still has a bit of braggadocious. There's a bit of KRS-One that I'm not mad about. Kanye West started off producing music. He was one of the top producers, and then he started to push his rap music, and it was kind of like he has this character which is the super cool kid. So it's like super cool was Kanye. What I like about hip-hop is that it was that counter culture, that counter voice to the middle class white American voice.
Yeah, and in a sense, Vanilla Ice and all that kind of stuff, right? That was it was like Elvis. You had Little Richard, right? And he's going wop bop baloo bop wop bam bam tutti fruity, and he's whacking it out, right? And then they bring in this other white guy, wop bop baloo up wop bam boo tutti fruity, right? So you had people trying to whitewash this black music, right? This black rock and roll thing,
or capitalise on it.
Little Richard was absolutely the creator of rock and roll. There's no doubt about it. I'm not saying he was the only piece of the jigsaw, right? But he certainly is a huge part of it, like, you know, attitude. There was other people, you know, there was definitely other people. Elvis Presley certainly didn't get where he was just through Colonel Parker. Like, you know, he had talent, he had sexuality, he had all that stuff, like, you know what I mean? Little Richard was writing these tunes, like, you know what I mean? And he was throwing it out there, like, you know. You still have this where the white acts will kind of overshadow some of the black ones, like, I mean, just because they're white.
Yeah, and I don't know if that works in this country. I think the line is not black and white. It's working class and
Middle class.
Middle class.
Okay.
It's inside the system and
so
outside the system.
versatile are 100% working
yeah, they're 100% white and they're 100% working class. So the colour of their skin isn't the thing. It's their address and their accent is the thing that's keeping them out. Their voice and their message is the thing that's the coolest thing about them. And that's how you can go and support Snoop, because he's not inside the system. He's his own fucking thing. And he's going, who's these mad bastards? Get them on a tour.
There's a TikTok video of this guy standing in the middle of the flats in Ringsend. He's going, look guys, I'm in Dublin. I'm in Ringsend. Right? I'm in the hood. And you hear, yep, the flats. You know, so it's steady. You know, this is what I love about this DIY culture, the podcast, you know, people making music and sharing it on Bandcamp and all these kind of stuff, and it becoming a thing, right? And then it's not part of FM radio. It's not part of this system. You know what I mean? People are picking up on that comedian guy, you know, I'm Delicious, right? And he's now getting, you know, he's now out there. You know what I mean? He wouldn't have been. He's a long-haired, overweight guy making jokes about food. He wouldn't have got on to RTE. He wouldn't have got on to the Late Late Show. But he probably will now. And the likes of these platforms, TikTok, YouTube, those things are now becoming more popular than normal TV.
I was looking at a thing of TikTok the other day. So a lot of these places have their offices in Ireland for tax reasons, right? So TikTok, I can't watch TikTok. I think it's too fast, it's too in your face, it's too abrupt or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I get the fascination with it, that it's just like continuous drips of small, fast-paced, funny, crazy images. You know what I mean? Videos or whatever. So if you had access to that, to put up content on that, yeah, and if you were becoming successful, like that fella that you were saying, you can affect people's ideas. Yeah, you can plant seeds in there, and you can do that for all different types of reasons, for sinister reasons.
Yeah.
So the reason I'm saying this is because, for example, that Inside the K, I think that was set up for sinister reasons. I don't think it was just a fluke that they chose that area. I think that it was planned out. It must have been thought out. There must have been the commissioner was involved, because there was, you know, superintendents and detectives and all with their face on camera.
Yeah.
So it must have been signed off at some kind of level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably the minister said, yes, we're going to have this show called Inside the K, and it's going to go from Finglas to Blanchardstown, and we're going to wave a stick at these people and demonise them a little bit in the national discourse.
Yeah, well, that makes good TV. You look at what goes on Sky, you know, in the UK, they have Road Wars or something like that. Like, I remember,
Benefit Street is so depressing. You've got Road Wars, you've got all that stuff where the cops are chasing people and all that kind of stuff. Bad boys, what you gonna do?
Whereas, if you're driving around Cabinteely, there's nothing there. You know, they're not chasing Yuffles and Scramblers.
The crime isn't on a street level.
Yeah.
It's on a laptop level. So, TikTok last week announced that they took down an operation that was planting seeds in Irish society, and they were kind of the seeds of divisiveness, right, pitching one group against the other group. So this was going on in the background for the last couple of years, where we're all on TikTok, sharing TikTok videos with each other. Yeah. And meanwhile, there's a group of people who have decided we're going to steer the discourse of Irish society in a certain way.
Yeah.
I find that fascinating. But I find it very akin to what RTE were doing in this country for fucking 50 years. We're going to steer the discourse of this country in a certain way. So a certain type of accent is the criminal.
And then there's the church part of it, which is very prevalent, you know. But you look at Nazi Germany, Goebbels he was a genius, like, you know what I mean, in terms of what he, propaganda, starting, the cartoons and in national newspapers and stuff like that, and then building it and building it and building it and building it till people believed the whole bullshit, and it became where you had the streets lined with people doing Nazi salutes and all that kind of stuff, and it just built and built and built.
So the reason I'm saying it is because since November of last year, so it's a year nearly since then, this stuff has been building. So I'm going to read this out. TikTok have taken down a covert influence operation network dedicated to targeting users in Ireland with divisive content to intensify social conflict. I don't think it's any coincidence that last week outside the Dáil we had a group of fascists turn up and start fucking intimidating members of the public, intimidating politicians and so on. I don't think it's by fluke. And what TikTok is saying is it's not by fluke. There is a group of people that we've been observing for the last year or so who've been trying to store up conflict in Irish society. All we see is flashy videos on TikTok. We don't realise that we're being...
No, I've seen them. I've seen the far right stuff on my TikTok feed, which I don't encourage. You know what I mean? I don't invite that kind of content. So why does it keep coming up?
Yeah, but the stuff that's explicitly far right, and then the stuff that's like not as explicit. Like a couple of lads I know done an article in Rabble magazine a couple of years ago, and it was about the use of the working class accent on TV. And they're not explicitly saying it, but it's like drip, 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 drip.
Yeah.
If we say this enough times in a subtle kind of way, people will think they're all travellers or scumbags. They're all people from Ballymun are fucking robbers. They're all people from... Where's RTE based? Montrose, is it? They're all people from Montrose are really, really respectable. If we keep on saying this years after years after years after years.
But that just didn't happen with TV or with TikTok that has always been a part of society, that, the kings and queens and the royalty and all were all the shit didn't smell kind of thing,
That's what I'm saying. And it goes back to the cocaine shipment being discovered off the coast of Ireland. It's portrayed as this big thing, but we don't get under the bonnet of it or under the hood of it and go, who the fuck in this country is using all that cocaine?
Yeah.
And if it was a different drug and if it was whatever, it would be portrayed as a total different fucking thing. So there's a point I'm trying to make. And I think the point I'm trying to make is if we believe everything that we see on our screens, if you're living in a working class community and you're in a sea of hopelessness, is that what you said? Just check out where you're at and where you're getting your information from, where you're getting your messages from, and how you feel about yourself.
Yeah.
Like we just come out of September, which is Recovery Month.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the most empowering things I've seen in working class communities in Ireland.
Absolutely.
In the last 50 years. We're no longer in a sea of hopelessness.
But there's no secrets. You see, this is the thing. Like I was at the recovery event last night. I co-hosted it with Tanya, and so you have people getting up singing songs, right? And and then they're saying, I was in the depths of whatever, of addiction, and now I'm recovering. Loads of people that, these people are now cheered, right? Instead of being, that's that dirty tramp of a yoke that begs outside the shop or something like that. So that's changing. Recovery Month is an amazing thing. A lot of people have got into cycling and running and all those kind of things, that's the voice. Why isn't that voice huge?
You just said it, and I don't think you realised you said it. There's a big dirty secret in Ireland.
Yes. Well, the dirty secret is that, that we need recovery in middle class areas, but they can pay for it. There's no waiting list there kind of thing.
But the big dirty secret is that in our media channels, we pretend that only working class people do drugs and crime. That's the big dirty secret.
Yeah.
And what we've learned in communities like this is we're just going to own our shit.
Yeah.
We're going to stop having shame and stop having secrets, and we're going to be open and honest about it.
Yes.
And one of the reasons we have to do that, because we've learned that not doing that is detrimental to us. We can't afford not to do it because we don't have the money. We can't hide because we don't have the hide walls. And we don't have the understanding of the system to go and do litigation when people defame us. That's
what I'm saying. That's what Freire says. We deal with what you're forced starting with hopelessness that has grown in poverty, in neglected parts of the city and parts of the country, when you have the system that neglects a group of people, well, then your beginning point is way, way further than the guys who are sniffing in the pubs in town, like, you know what I mean? The starting point is far more difficult, you know, and then you've got to deal with that first. So maybe through recovery, people will start to have a voice. People will will begin to use their voice and will begin to speak more truth. And then we'll see other people then becoming, being honest and about addiction in middle class society and in upper class society.
And so one of the big things in addiction in this community that I've noticed, say in the 80s and 90s, was this thing called scapegoating. And we do it in our own community. We've also been this scapegoat for the last 50 years. And now, because of communities like this embracing the recovery, the opportunities to scapegoat working class people are reducing. If they can't scapegoat working class people or black people or travellers or immigrants, what happens then?
Yeah, the focus turns on them, yeah. But look what happened with the whole church thing, like, you know what I mean? It just disappeared. You know, it's not a part of, you know what I mean? When the chewing babies thing, surfaced, like, you know what I mean? But it was just shoved again. It was just like, it was shoved on, like, you know. There's no program like the K, like, you know what I mean, about, do you know what I mean? It's not there, and it's not going to be there. It's not part of the loud rhetoric, you know. It's not forefront in that rhetoric, you know what I mean? There's also workers' rights, migrants' rights, all that kind of stuff is not forward in Irish media, you know what I mean? Cost of living, all that kind of stuff. It's all about profit, you know, and it's all, the ESB having huge profits, but yeah, trying to raise the price of electricity for people by 3 or 4%, like, you know what I mean? And there's no loud voice going, no, you can't do that.
So just like in New York in the late 70s, early 80s, which birthed the loud voice of hip hop, we're at a point in Irish society where podcasts, like the ones that you referenced at the start there, Shine a Lie, the Recovery podcast that Jimmy Bell does, this podcast, the one I do with Martin, Untold Stories, that are the loud voice of working class people who have come to a point where they're saying no more secrets, no more shame. So let's encourage you. If you're out there, encourage those voices, encourage those podcasts, listen to them, share them, talk about them around the kitchen table or wherever you're talking. Try and stay yourself off TikTok at the moment, because under their own admission, there's groups out there trying to steer Irish society back in a different way, where we begin to hate ourselves again and we begin to listen to those bullshit stories of who we are. We're not that.
And I think we should be trying to encourage people to get vocal. You know, it's like more traveller groups making podcasts, more working class women making podcasts. We have Vogue and our mate, winning an award there. Like, you know what I mean? I'd love to see the 3 women from Ballymun, leave a light on, winning awards. Like,
so what we need to do is
encourage each
other. Be a megaphone for each other and have the confidence to do it. And yes, there will, if we get 1,000 people do it, there will be, quality issues, and some of them will be absolute shy, but then we will get a 2-pack from it. You know what I mean? We will get...
We're the 2-pack then.
But those voices are there, and we just need to encourage them. Deadly.
That was savage.
I like that one.
It was good.
There was something that you wanted to come in at the start and say, though.
It was just on my mind. It was the whole thing about the ship. I could see the images of the ship, and you're kind of going, this is weird, like, you know what I mean? It's like they're ratting on themselves or something, I don't know.
For all those school principals and business owners whose cocaine got fucking snatched the other day.
There's loads more around, mate. Don't
there's
worry.
Loads. That's only a drop in the ocean. Yup, there's hope for everybody. There's coke for everybody. Episode 15, Fresh Batch Podcast. Yup the flats. Sea of hope.
I want to tell you a story about a woman I know. She thought she had 10 toes, but she didn't really know. She only had 9. She only had 9. She only had 9. Yeah, she did. She thought she had 9, but she had 8. She had diabetes and they kept taking them away. She was Billy No Toes. That was her name. Billy No Toes. That was her name. She walked around in circles. She walked up to the lane. She walked out to the shops. All the time in the rain. Billy No Toes. Billy No Toes. She was Billy No Toes. She shiny teeth. Billy No Toes. Billy No Toes. Dimmy No Douse. Billy No Toes. That was her name. Dimmy No Douse. Billy No Toes. She was a woman. She had no teeth. She went to Turkey. She got her hair done. She got her bald patch removed. She was Billy No Toes. Dimmy No Douse. The Billy No Toes. Dimmy No Douse. Billy No Toes. Dimmy No Douse, no Douse, no Dimmy No Douse, no D. Dimmy No Douse, no Douse, no Dimmy No Douse, no Douse. Oh, Dimmy No Douse, no Douse. Dimmy No Douse, no D. Dimmy No Douse, no Douse, no Douse, no Douse, no Douse, no Douse, no Dimmy No D.
Here, fuck off, will you? Fresh, yeah?